Good evening, everyone. Welcome to STRAAT. We are very excited to kick off our very first STRAAT session tonight. Thank you all for watching us. We are really happy about it. Well, to start with our first session, we thought nothing more fair than starting with the history of graffiti and street art from the place where we call our home, Amsterdam, and of course the Netherlands as a whole. So in order to do that, this evening we are going to revisit the Kroonjuwelen documentary, which this year celebrates its 15th anniversary. So for those who are not very familiar yet with Kroonjuwelen, this is a documentary from 2006 that narrates the history of graffiti in the Netherlands from 1978 to 2005 through rare video footage. So the movie features some interviews with some graffiti pioneers from the Netherlands and also some American artists. And in this way, the movie covers the birth of graffiti out of the punk scene, and then its emergence into the hip-hop culture, following the evolution of this art form into the art world. Our talk this evening is going to have a very similar structure to the movie, so we will revisit this history in a chronological order. And of course, we will talk about everything like what you see in the movie, all the history, starting in the 70s, then how things were during the time of the movie in 2006, and what happened 15 years after the movie was released. So during the end of our discussion panel, we are also going to be answering questions from our audience. So please feel free to ask all your questions in the comments of this video. And after the discussion panel, the Kroonjuwelen full movie with English subtitles is going to be available in our YouTube channel until the 18th of March. So in this way, you have all these days to watch it whenever convenient for you. Well, now I would like to quickly introduce you to our incredible panelists. We have here Diana Ozon, who has been working with literature, punk, and graffiti since the late 70s. Here on my side, I have Erwin. He is from Stunt Film, so he's one of the producers of Kroonjuwelen, and he was responsible for its storyline. And also, I'm happy to have ZAP here joining us tonight, this evening. He is an old school graffiti writer who is known for his many tags on trams around Amsterdam, but also for his iconic train surfing. And well, unfortunately, Hugo Kaagman had to withdraw last minute due to personal reasons, but next time he will join us. And I am Giovanna Di Giacomo. I'm head of collection management and research at STRAAT Museum, and I will be the mediator of this talk. Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to start asking a bit Erwin to understand a little bit how the movie originated. I know that the idea in the beginning was just to make a small documentation after when you guys went to the Mokum Masters event, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
What happened that it became into this legendary documentary?
Well, I don't know. It just started as a small project. We wanted to do something with video again, and I thought the Mokum Masters would be a good opportunity to make a short movie. So we had a short clip for about 3 or 5 minutes in mind. Mm-hmm. So we went to the Mokum Masters and started filming there. And during the day, all the reactions were so enthusiastic that people say, "Oh, what kind of movie it's going to be, and where it's can I find it?" So we thought, well, maybe this could be something to make a larger movie. So we thought we make a project not from 5 or 10 minutes, but 30. But during the process, old school shoeboxes opened and people came with movie fragments, and we did starting to do some interviews, and from one came another, and it grew and grew, and eventually we thought, well, we have a nice opportunity to make a good movie. So that's the birth of Kroonjuwelen, and it ended up in a documentary from 75 minutes.
Yeah, wow, impressive how it all happened organically,
it
right?
was kind of coincidence, so we rolled into it. It started small, but it ended big, and yeah, it was...
Yeah, amazing. And well, and how did you get connected to the graffiti scene, actually?
Well, I lived nearby Amsterdam in my youth, so when I was 11, 12, 13, I bicycled through Amsterdam taking pictures of all the graffiti and the stencil graffiti from Hugo and Diana. So I saw it from a small distance, so I knew the story. Later on I moved to another part in Holland, but always been connected to Amsterdam, so I always knew what was going on here. So I knew the storyline from a young age, so I was there seeing it all happen.
Yeah, nice. So for you it was already a bit natural to come up with the storyline for the documentary?
Yeah, of course, yeah. And I did a little bit of graffiti, but not like all the guys in the movie, but well, I was a viewer.
Yeah, nice. And I have a curiosity. Why, well, for people who don't speak Dutch, Kroonjuwelen means actually crown jewels. Why is this the name of the movie?
Because the crown jewels are the diamonds on the king's crown.
Yeah.
We thought, well, this is the best of the originators of graffiti, and they are all based in Amsterdam. So we thought these people are the crown jewels from the crown, and in graffiti language, when you're a king, you're the best, and well, on the crown are the crown jewels, and these are the guys and girls in the movie.
Yeah, nice, makes sense. Well, I think it's also very interesting that different from American graffiti, graffiti in the Netherlands has its roots in the punk movement. So we will now show a scene of the movie where you see Diana Ozon performing, singing about this movement and how they were feeling about it back in the days.
Dus now now I can take this off because there's no sound. Because it's a bit ridiculous actually.
So Diana performing. Do you still sing, by the way?
Yes, together with my musician Will Small, for instance. He's a composer, and I used to have a band called the Three Buddhas.
Nice.
And but it's not no religious music. It's punk again, and world music from all. Will she can play all kind of. All kinds of styles. He's very professional, and also sometimes with other musicians as a session.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. And well, going back to the history in this scene that we see you singing, and also during the documentary, you explained that in the late 70s, society had become very impersonal. The hippie times were over, so there was no more youth culture. On the other hand, unemployment was going really up. So could you tell us a little bit more about these times? Like what did Amsterdam look like? What was the general feeling back then?
Well, at that moment it's incredible, but a lot of the city was empty. People were from old neighborhoods. They went to new built boom towns around the capital, around Amsterdam. But this happened in other cities in the Netherlands as well. That the old neighborhoods and the 19th century and all the old industrial buildings, but also then the school buildings, because the kids, the parents took their kids as well. There was out of town, so it was empty, and there was before us there was a Provo and hippie movement already showing the way of youngsters taking their own destiny in their own hands, and so we had a good example how to do this. There was already graffiti, but that was just whitewash, huge letters with mostly funny things and funny quotations and some Dadaistic political things. So we knew you could write on the wall or paint on the wall. That was also already there. So we could squat these buildings. That's what we learned from the older youth. How to squat buildings, and we took these buildings and made them our own cultural paradise. To make music, to paint, start making clubs. And so we were all totally self-sufficient. We didn't need the upper culture to bring us amusement or school us or whatever, because we were punks. We didn't need to be schooled by the system anymore. They tried enough, but there was a huge unemployment, so there was no need for whatever. And so we had a self-sufficient society in these squatted buildings all over the Netherlands, all over Europe at the end, all over the world. Youngsters started to make punk music and make advertisements for these punk bands. And with these bands came fanzines, and these fanzines, I also made a fanzine together with friends, for instance, Hugo Kaagman, who, it's a pity he can't be here to explain, but so these fanzines were also a part of the propaganda. There was no internet, so and they had to be advertised. So all these names, nicknames of products punks made, were written on the wall. And with that, it was an example for the other youngsters that were not yet punk, and they would start writing on the wall as well. The media found out, and well, something's happening. What are these kids doing? So they came to the people they could find, and I was first having a punk club together with some people who had a punk magazine called Koekerand, such a fanzine, and this Koekerand had a punk club, and after that this punk club became in the same squat building. It became a art walk in gallery, and so I was the youngest gallerist of the Netherlands suddenly, being what was I, 20 years I think, and graffiti didn't sell anyway, but cut out stencils and putting the spray on shirts and jackets and so that and t-shirts, that went well, and also other fanzines were sold there, and it became a kind of pop shop. Later, Keith Haring had a pop shop, and it became a place, a factory, you could say, full of people, youngsters who exchanged graffiti, went together, made organized meetings, or let's put on a note, tomorrow we're going to tag this or that place, the metro, for instance, the subway, things like that. And so the press found out, and they came to this gallery Anus, it was called, Anus. It's very nice logo. You have to.
Yeah, we will show some images as well.
Okay, and then you have this printed matter. Okay, this is what we think about the drukwerk in Dutch, drukwerk. And if you're very distinctive, you will say, not I'm going to dump or have shit or so. You say druk. het drukje. So it's drukwerk.
Yeah.
It had this. Anyway, so Galerie Anus, and the press came there. Also, it is another number from the Non-Vendeurs. The band is called The Press Mosquitoes Came My Way. They write down everything they say. I say, picture it in their own way. Oh, Mrs. Press, you don't see much, and you even write less. Okay.
Yeah, amazing. And because what I find very interesting is that you said that you already saw people writing on the walls before, like before you guys started.
Yeah, Provo or Jesus saves, Jezus redt.
So, but when would you say that you could see the first signs of taggings on walls in Amsterdam? Or writing on walls?
That was already people there were still tags left from the Second World War. It went fluently over, and then you had this 50s labor protest, or when there was elections, of course, parties would go and with whitewash put on Communist Party or whatever, or Provo, this provocative young party, or Kabouter, which means Kabouter, wat betekent dat? Smurf?
Midget.
How you said it?
Yeah.
What do you call it? Kabouter?
I think midget.
Midget? No,
That's not a midget.
the fairy tale.
Drone?
Gnomes.
yeah.
Gnome party, or kabouter party. We call
Gnome
it kabouter.
parties.
And so these things, they were already in my childhood. I remember in Dutch you have to make verbs, bent verbs with a D or a DT. No, they say Jezus red, this red, that's how I remembered. It was just on the Vondel Bridge, on the bridge on the Vondelstraat.
Okay.
Near the Vondelstraat. Vondelpark. And so I start spelling from graffiti. I start recognizing words. And so there was this other graffiti near my school. School is not Luwek. So the letters were wrong way. And that was also something punk. And you could not only bend a letter in the wrong way, write it in the wrong way, but you could also change letters within a word just to make it more rough. Pure, and not taking care of even how to write the words, as long as other people could understand it. And the city was full of words. You could read so much, and there were a lot of cartoons, because that was the other thing. We were brought up with comics, and we were the first generation really to be brought up with comic books and comic movies, and so we started drawing small cartoons on the, and it didn't have also always to be the same thing. For instance, I wrote poems on the street. Well, I didn't write the same poem over and over again. It was a one-shot thing.
Yeah, oh, super interesting. And well, we know that in the beginning of the punk graffiti, Dr. Rat was a very important figure. And could you tell us a little bit about his role in there?
He was a member of the gang of my childhood. We lived in the same block. And so I was very happy to see him again when first we had something to do with the Koekeransom exhibition, and he came over to check it, and so we met again, and we haven't seen each other for maybe 2 years, but when you're 18 this is a huge time, of course. 2 years is, you can imagine, it's an age. Now anyway, he said, well, I do this, and it was in the museum, and he put his tag on the wall in the museum next to the signature of the artist who painted that whole museum. I thought, wow, so yes, he's still the same, he didn't change. That was, we make this magazine, he started working with the magazine, he started making huge advertisements for the magazine on the street, and he went to school to London. And then later he dropped school later in a few months afterwards. But then he dropped he started a punk club in our squad together with us, and he was very busy and advertising that one and trying to design everything, logos and so on. Going from squad to squad, always being the person, the designer, the one, and he was everywhere and really doing nice lettering. I wanted to make something that everybody could see how nice graffiti was. So we designed the Grand Prix du Graffiti, the big graffiti prize, and went all through town and wrote down or copied in a copybook what we saw, and well, he sprung out as very, we didn't see anything like that. And he continued doing so, and also making a magazine and performances. Yeah, it was youngsters. Then the press again, the press mosquitoes. There they were again. They saw what an ideal rebel this person was, and he was very. How is it?
Mediatic?
Mediatic, yeah. He was very mediatic, so he also would act even rougher because the camera was on. And so this went really well. And then he was an example for the young kids. Is Dr. Red there? In the gallery. Is no, but maybe he will be here. Well, he sleeps long. Maybe around 5 he will come up. And,
nice.
Yeah, so. But all these magazines, they started, oh, this is what where we have to write about. Well, the other magazine does this as well, dus the other one does this as well. And the youngsters, they cut out and put it on their teenage bedroom.
Yeah.
And
cool.
so this become archetypes, masters. Yeah. Real masters explaining, and he enjoyed it when a crowd of kids would be around and asking and showing him things and asking how to do things, or if they could come with him to do something. So that's how it went.
He was a really big influence at that time.
He was a big influence, and it went well. And he was also really in the underground culture, and not only just in punk, but also with more arty people and in the music scene, not only punk music but also jazz music. So, and but at the end he was the nice thing about it. It was we were making illegal television and radio, also that medium, because that could also be. So he started acting for a station called Rabotnik Televisie, and luckily they made some shots about how he worked. So there is some movie material how he worked. Okay. And also luckily there's movie material. There's one movie made by students which thanks to Stunt Media for Kroonjuwelen.
It's in the movie as well.
It's discovered because it was a very weird format, and so it was there all the time. But these small bits of film are the only crumbs. And it's incredible because right now everything is. So at one end you have the upper media taking everything, making on paper, on print, and in movies and radio and so on. And on the other hand, what we really did was very rare to be filmed. This was.
It was not very common in these days to film it. It was. He was in all the magazines, in the Nieuwe Revue and the Panorama. There were all articles about him, but not any movie material. So this was like a gold mine.
I had a photo camera, and it was very rare to take a picture.
Yeah.
So so if you did this once, if you had 26 photos in a quarter of a year, it was already something, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And ZAP, I have a question for you. Like, were you already following what was going on at that time? Because you started a little bit later, no? Or
that might have been only a few months, but I was from the period that she's talking about. I was probably 10, 11, 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to read the articles in the Panorama and Nieuwe Revue, but I also saw everything on the streets because it became more and more. And I just scribbled little things, and I also had a tag, but it was until 1983 that I started my tag that made me famous, ZAP.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And because in '83 was when Jackie Kornblit brought the American artist to Amsterdam for the first time. So then everybody was introduced to the New York style. Did it also have an influence on you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because those gallery openings, there were only maybe 4 or 6 graffiti writers allowed to enter anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of them, but I had to wait until somebody opened the door, because the USA was already inside, and they
That's 5.
controlled the. They were with 5, so they were.
Why was that? That there only could be 6 graffiti writers in the...
They sort of kept it to themselves that there were New York writers there, and one. It was actually Jesus, it was the writer's name. He said, "Oh, you should come then and then," and then so then I knocked on the window, and then I could come in and meet Quick and Ramelzi and maybe Dondi.
Dondi?
Yeah, yeah. Sapphire.
Futura?
Futura, yeah.
Erwin?
I have never met him, but Shu and some of them, of his friends, met him.
I think he came
Hang
a
out
bit
with him.
later, right? He didn't come with this first batch of American artists.
No, he came later.
Yeah. Okay, and well, I think it's really interesting this transition from the punk scene into the more American style, which of course has a lot of influence from hip hop movement, and it works both ways. I'm very, I wonder how did these two scenes in the Netherlands went in parallel, because of course here it was very different from many other parts in the world, that the graffiti scene was really part of the punk culture, but then there was this American influence, and I wonder, like, well, from all of you, how did this go?
Actually, I had a punk-related tag, ZAP tag, that changed into American-style graffiti-related tag, and Shu probably also, but he had more. He used to draw a shoe, so he had more like a comic, maybe from a comic book or more advertisement world type of tag, but had actually happened within a very small period of a few months that the whole punk scene and punk writers sort of died out in '84, and in my knowledge there was a little bit of a vacuum after that for maybe 6 months, where taggers like Ego and Dragon and Dr. Air, and they sort of stopped tagging in that year, although there's still a lot of tags from '84, but that was probably more in the beginning of the year. And then there was a meeting on a spot called Hangout, and just before that first meeting was there, it was Shu who got inspired by a huge Quick piece row up on a wall in Amsterdam Zuid. So he did what I remember, he did a tram stop house with the name of his girlfriend, very huge. And they also did a few United Street artists. The tram stop was Marion. And there were a few of those things within a week or two appearing in Amsterdam Zuid. And and I lived there too, and I knew him from school. He was 2 classes higher. So that's how how the change came. So a lot of people actually looked at Shu as a like before they were looking at Dr. Rat. Then it became him and the United Street artists. But that all happened just in a couple of weeks, months, and then probably nobody even remembered that he started it or whatever, or they started it because Joker and 2 other writers of the USA.
Delta Jazz.
Yeah, Delta was actually writing alone. Jazz came actually quite late, of what I remember, maybe
he came by the
end
USA
of 85, 86. And so
you had to do a test to come in.
yeah, that's you can see that in the movie. You had to
Wasn't it also because hip hop came up, and for young people, hip hop was the next music, and it had a little bit different from punk attitude because it was suddenly good to make money, for instance. And,
yeah, but that came later.
that came later.
Yeah, I mean the book Subway Art changed a lot.
And the documentary Star Wars.
Yeah,
and then it
but probably the
exploded,
book even more, because in those
Yeah.
days you had 2 channels on TV, so where were you going to see Star Wars?
No, that was later on.
Yeah, so the book Subway Art was probably the most stolen book in Amsterdam. The American discount store and a few shops where a lot of, like tourist shops, big bookshops had that book in.
That's already totally different from watching my name go by from
that
mailer, where it's all scribble, scrabble.
You had to be very, very knowledgeable to even know that book back then.
Yeah, it was in the Slechte. That was in a book dump shop, and that was beautiful because I think it costed 2 guilders or so, €1 you would say now. It was almost free because nobody was interested at that time. But we thought the ones who had this book, well, this is great. You see, it's some kind of wallpaper, totally by individuals together, decorated the street and have beaten concrete.
But it's a bit similar, huh? Watching my name go by and Subway Art, the change.
But the hip hop influence is more noticeable in Subway Art, and it was actually a very positive vibe because there in New York they had all these gangs fighting and killing each other, and then they made it a peace treatise, and they all wrote their names. All the gangs wrote that they will have peace from now on. And then they had like continuous parties everywhere in the neighborhoods, and all the ex-gang members invited each other into their parties, and from that a whole new positive vibe came with electric boogie and breakdancing and graffiti and when we picked up on that in Amsterdam, it had something positive. It was different from the sort of everyday depression that was
about that time, because there was a hip hop group posing. Hugo Kaagman was doing hoe zeg je, schutting, hoe noem je dat? A wall, a temporary wall near Waterloopplein in the center of Amsterdam. And wooden panels on panels, yes. And it was about 80 meters long, and it was full with poetry and all kind of scenery, and a young hip hop group, even with wearing white socks, for instance, when nice afro hair, were posing in front of the Hugo's.
Probably Henky Bakboord and.
Breakdance is the single called. The single is called Breakdance.
Nice.
And it was about that must have been 83 or 84, and I remember going to Paradiso, where a few of these groups were performing, and it was full of very young people. And again, this teen spirit that was the beginning of punk. But suddenly it was a new music that. So it's before 85 already, totally a different scene taking over.
Yeah. It changed.
Yeah.
The punk
and nice
disappeared.
colorful graffiti and more positive vibe with stars and highlights.
Colors. Colors.
Do you think it also became less political?
Colors.
Or can you say
Yes,
that?
I think so. I think it became non-political. And the big squads, there were evictions, and the punks had to rebel against the police because there were evictions all the time. And then at that time, it was a little bit. No, there were still squads, and punk is still not dead. Yeah. And but the big squads were a little bit less, I think, getting. This culture changed a bit. It was more getting close to club life and events and going all the way to what we know now as a party scene.
And for how long was the Anus Gallery active?
Oh, from Queen's Day, or from the 30th of April 1979 till the end of 79, and then it changed its name into Ozon spray, because of the printed matter, the spray works were far more wanted and far more interesting to experiment with. And from a graffiti hangout, that's the word I was looking for. From a hangout, it became more a shop with a counter, and so in Ozon. What was the question?
Yeah, until when did you have the gallery? Until.
Oh yes, and then so it's changed its name. We closed Anus, and then I still felt the vibe and said, well, I continue, but now it will be a shop. With a counter, and then within. I think within that year, so in 1980, it was a lot of vibe in 1980 with evictions, and it was the crowning year, calling about Kroonjuwelen. A lady, it was a queen got the crown. It took 3 queens to get a king.
Amazing. Well, for sure, like even though punk graffiti, or what we can somehow call hip hop graffiti, even though they have their differences, we definitely can say that these both branches played a key role in setting Amsterdam as Europe's graffiti capital at that time, because from here, from Amsterdam, a lot of styles spread across whole Europe. And we will see now another scene of Kroonjuwelen, where you hear in the words of Hai a little bit how this happened.
Nou, vanaf dat moment
Sorry.
maar heel graffiti schrijvend en teringleier Amsterdam, om het zo maar te zeggen. Vanaf dat moment is graffiti in Europa gewoon zo vet geworden. En Amsterdam was het begin. Wij waren het begin.
Alsof we door een virus gegrepen waren. Alles stond in het teken van graffiti. Of je nou rijk of arm was, je ging gewoon samen op pad. In de stad was geen witte plek meer te bekennen. Het fenomeen graffiti kreeg gestalte en steeds meer schrijvers ontwikkelden hun eigen stijl.
Yeah, so as we see now in the scene of Kroonjuwelen, graffiti really spread across Amsterdam and also the Netherlands. It really became a big youth culture that also, of course, spread across Europe. And as we know, trains and trams had a very important role in this culture development. And well, in the Kroonjuwelen, my favorite part is definitely the subway tunnel scene. I really enjoy it a lot. And I am wondering, Erwin, how was for you guys to record the scenes there? Were you not worried about what could happen?
No, not worried. It was kind of an adventure because we went for the interview with ZAP, and he said, well, maybe we should go to the tunnels, and but we have never been there, so it was kind of an adventure to go into these tunnels. But once we're in, it was this Valhalla of pieces and murals and fences and stairs, and it was like
Actually, we never planned to go into the tunnels.
no, there was not really a plan. It
I
was
only
more
wanted
like,
to point something out, and then
Oh.
we walked closer and closer, and
maybe we should
then
go
I
now.
just spontaneously walked in, and they followed.
Yeah, and suddenly we were into the tunnels. So
Yeah.
So it was easy to get in there.
yeah, it was very
Well,
easy. I don't know now, but
Actually, many people don't know, but the whole anti-terrorism police squad, undercover squad, plus 10, 15 policemen came
searching.
searching for us.
Oh, really?
And they actually found us, or they saw me at some point, one. But then we escaped from them by going under the platform in the direction of them. So they came this way and we went that way, and then it was
then
funny,
took,
we escaped.
The stairs up, and there was this. Well,
Yeah, through one of the
gate
exits.
and then
And then
we
we
suddenly were in the middle of the streets, and we closed the exit, and it was.
Yeah.
Did you know your way well in the subway?
Yeah, I used to have a key, a mother key of everything that had to do with subway. So I've been everywhere, day and night. I didn't like going at night into the bomb shelters because I was afraid to get lost, and there were junkies sometimes and
There's
weird
also
people.
a ghost station, isn't it?
Yeah, ghost station underneath. But I used to go also after 12 go in, and I even made a comic of the adventures of Zappo in the subways. I actually have these comics.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
Zappo going into the and we had these walkie-talkies, so we could hear when they said, oh, they're going this way, or they're going that way, or there's some kids in the tunnels, and then we would shout something back. Very silly.
But there were not so many cameras in those times.
Yeah, we always thought that they didn't watch those cameras.
Okay.
Or probably they didn't.
They probably didn't, and I don't think they had these advanced things. But in the movie you can see that I don't really, I sort of go around this sort of fence that has a,
It went
but
very smooth, huh?
but then I opened it for them because I figured they couldn't make that same swing move going past the little fence. But we always believed there was a little thing in that fence that would sort of have a buzzing light somewhere in a control room. But I don't know.
Well, a lot of
we walked
stories.
around for a couple of hours, and then we left. So
Yeah, and we also hang
amazing.
on some subways.
yeah, that was later.
And I remember the cameraman I said, come up, and I was looking from the top of the subway, and he was sitting there going, no, and I was going, come up.
How
And
did he film that scene?
Well, he actually came up in the end.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
impressive. You guys have a lot of skills to do that with the camera and.
Yeah. Actually, I hadn't been on those subways for 20 years probably when that movie.
Okay.
And that was also a spontaneous thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, amazing. Well, going a little bit more into terminologies, because I really, what I noticed in the movie is that, of course, the movie is mostly about graffiti, but you also see, for example, that the first Dutch graffiti crew is called United Street Artists. And you also see, like as Diana said, that people, or you also mentioned this, that there were already people making characters already during those times. So I really, what do you guys think that is the, what's the difference between graffiti and street art? Or were people at that time already thinking like, I'm making street art, or was everything just graffiti, or it didn't matter? How did these labels work back in those days?
Well, there was always a little bit of street art. Like there was a big mural of a kid, Johnny Rotten. It still exists on the Lepelstraat near Wieboudstraat. But street art, the way it's called now, didn't really have a culture by itself. It was the graffiti with the letters and the designs, and there might be a comic figure next to it, but it was not as diverse as the street art nowadays.
I understand.
Yeah, or it would be like those wooden panels Hugo did in the around a new building block. That's
You could call him a street
that's
artist.
street art. That is not graffiti. Is really I think something illegal, and street art can be with some kind of agreement with the people who own the building or whatever. Can be in commission.
Yeah.
Probably that's the word. Yeah.
It's more like a specialism these days. It's graffiti is just like spraying your cans on the wall and putting your name everywhere and put a character beneath it. But street art is pure art form. It's taken a different leap, I guess. It's not, it's a different thing, I think.
But it was punk art. Making graffiti is a part of punk art, or that's punk art.
Yeah.
So there was some kind of art, but not how you say, with a total cultural lemma around it. It was.
Wow.
Graffiti is often repeating the same name.
Yeah.
What we call graffiti now.
Yeah.
I mean, there used to also be people with spears and boomerangs making graffiti, but nowadays we call graffiti a name that you multiply and become famous with that name.
But would you say that the moment that it's about only a character, does it become street art?
Yeah, maybe, or if it's stencils or the things you see behind here, or can be anything, or the Anne Frank mural.
And because like what, for instance, like you were already making stencils back in the days, would you consider this, of course I know you consider it graffiti, but do you also see a relation with what we call street art in this sense?
Well, yes, I see because with these stencils, if you make a collection with it, name for instance Banksy, he works with stencils. Hugo Kaagman, he works with stencils, and well, he's a stencil king. It's a part of graffiti what Hugo Kaagman makes, and I guess that's still graffiti, but you can call it art too. And suddenly there's somebody asks, hey, will you do this wall for me? And then suddenly you say, well, okay, it's on the street, it's art, it's street art, okay.
Yeah.
And this is a very thin line because, but I for me, graffiti is what you do spontaneously. Without asking, and it doesn't have to be the same word all the time, but it has to be. I cut a stencil from my publisher just as a present, and went to a skate pit and sprayed it in illegal, and then took a picture and just and gave him the stencil. I said, from now on you can just advertise without asking, and here's a spray can. If you want your publish house to be around, I can help you. Let's do this. And but it's illegal, and then it's. I think, well, it's a stencil. Is it art? Is it? No, it's graffiti.
Yeah.
And besides that, I love the sound graffiti and it's ancient.
Yeah, definitely.
really,
yeah. Definitely. It
Yeah.
has a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
Well, from all graffiti writers that we follow during Kroonjuwelen, one of the writers who is definitely still very active right now is Again, and he wasn't able to be here this evening, but he shared with us some unreleased footage of what he has been doing during this year. So we will now look into some footage of Again from 2021. So his recent adventures. Wow. We can also.
I don't think he wants to be on a camera.
No, that's why he's not here. So, but he shared this with us. It's already 6:51.
Really? Okay.
And we still have the photos.
Woont ze nog steeds op diezelfde plek? Ja.
Well, besides Again, we know, of course, that there are a lot of graffiti writers out there from different generations who are still active. So, yeah, what do you guys think about the graffiti from these days?
Very good. I mean, sometimes it looks a bit the same as what we used to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really notice it, but that style of graffiti I don't notice so much. But there is also a lot of different stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it evolved also. So yeah, I mean, they're very talented writers and very beautiful,
And a lot-
astonishing things.
A lot of funny figures and jokes. And what I like is when I'm sitting in a train, public transport, and the windows are totally painted. And I'm sitting inside and I'm really feeling like I'm in this driving punk club. It's beautiful.
I think the funny part is that the platform changed. So it used to be on the streets, but now it's more on the social media. So you have all these kids who are very famous, and you haven't even heard of them, but they do a lot of things on trains and subways and walls, and they all film it and make movies from it, and they post it on Instagram, and it's great. So you can see a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So it evolved to another platform. So I like that.
And
Yeah.
what is nice to take the same spot, all go to that same door, or wall somewhere, a back door of a warehouse in the center of town, or a metal, how do you say that, cabinet for electricity or so, and all take that object, or a piece of a bridge, or a pole for the traffic light.
This building,
Huh?
this building,
Oh yes.
Yeah, this building.
Our
All go
building.
to the same, and make it a total patina, totally, like a wallpaper, totally full, a Gesamtkunstwerk, they would say, a work of art made together, not by the individual, but with all
Combination.
the parts, the combination. Oh, beautiful! Yeah.
And you have this guy, he's called Triple, when Triple gets furious, and he's doing all these panels on trains, but he's making kind of stop motion movies with it. So he makes a panel on the train, and then takes a picture, and then he starts doing all kind of mind tricks, and he makes a loop of all the photos, so you have to search them.
he actually did
It's
one
insane.
of the sentences I used in the documentary. He made a
I
train
saw
with that.
one.
One of my phrases, he made a train of this
Oh, really?
Yeah, this guy, he did the whole subway art
harde
book.
discipline.
He remade it on Dutch trains. So he takes some copy from the book,
Yeah.
and then he made his own triple piece of it,
Yeah.
and he sprays that on the train. So it's insane.
Yeah. Wow. Super
And
interesting.
new techniques to get high up with a pole and all
Fire
kind of-
extinguishers. And
Yeah. Do you see a lot of evolution in terms of technique as well?
Yes, huge wall paintings and not always illegal overnight. It's incredible.
And very different spray can caps and
Yeah.
fast spray cans and their whole shops with these things. When we were young, they would stop working because it was freezing outside, and then you had to grab another one and hold it in your hand and make it warm and put it in your jeans to get it working again. Very different now.
Yeah. Well. But I think like we can definitely say that in terms of resources, there are definitely more resources now, and of course there is also the internet that has a very, very important role in all the documentation. But do you think in terms of like, getting caught, it became I mean, I see that in Amsterdam you see less and less illegal graffiti than it used to be. Do you guys also have this perception that now it's more difficult to express yourself on walls?
Sure, the whole city is monitored by cameras, and back then, if you got caught, you went home the same day, and the policeman said, "So here's your marker. Otherwise, you'll be here tomorrow again for stealing one," and whatever.
You have to walk home.
You have to walk home, and then the next day you would be back again.
And now there are databases, so it's getting a kind of fingerprint stuff, and
yeah.
so somebody get caught and they found out, well, already this person for 36 years is doing this, and now for the first time is caught because of modern technology.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
or it is old age, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we are really happy that on our walls we still have, it's still allowed to paint freely. So we are happy we can still preserve one of these locations so people can still practice their skills whenever they want. And anybody is welcome, of course. Well, I think we need to, I'm sorry. This is a very interesting talk. I think we could talk for hours about it, and also for me when I was preparing all the questions and everything, I was like, oh my God, I could definitely come up with hundreds of questions because there's so much to talk about. So let's hope in the future we can talk more about it, and our audience can, of course, also watch the documentary to learn much more. We will, before we jump into the questions from the audience, we will show a scene from the Mokum Masters event, which is where the whole Kroonjuwelen originated. So right after we show the scene, we will start answering all the questions from the audience. I got lost here.
Hoeveel mensen?
Ja, hey, wat goed man. Allemaal de boeken bij. Oké. En een lekkere kleine. Kroontje erbij ook. Boris, mag voor jou even nog eentje? Kost nou een doek voor jou? Ik maak er heel weinig, dus ik loop heel erg achter.
Well, we have here some interesting questions to the audience, from the audience, to our participants, of course. The first one is from Emma, and it's addressed to Diana. Diana, how do you think that is the punk culture now in the Netherlands, and do you still define yourself as a punk?
Now, thanks for your question, Emma. Of course, punk is, as I said, punk is not dead. Punk still survive, although against the current again. And I still listen to punk music. I'm making punk music, and I'm making cartoons. Always looking at the yeah. It's a way of living. It's not a fashion. It's not only a youth culture. It's a commitment, a statement. And so punk is much more than a cultural thing. It's also a sociological thing. It's punk is. And no, I thought society would have collapsed by 1984. It didn't. By 2000, then maybe it didn't. And so punk, all punks never die, we say.
Amazing. Then I have another question here that is to everybody from Masiral. Why do you think that renowned museums got interested in graffiti? Because we could see already since the 80s that there were some exhibitions of graffiti, for example, in the Boymans in Rotterdam, and then we know, of course, the Kate Haring show in the Stedelijk Museum. What do you guys think that appealed to big renowned institutions?
Well, it's a movement, so if you have the quality to get in a museum, why not? But I think there are a lot of people doing it, so I'm not sure if everybody gets into the museum. The thing museum mostly pick up is the Banksy guys, the Keith Haring, back in the 1980s, the Ramelsey and Dundies. But I don't think it's very much in the museum right now. I think it's a nice thing for a museum like this, but I don't see it in the Stedelijk or the Boymans.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who were 35 years ago when we were doing it, 35. So they were young then, and they looked up to these graffiti artists, and now they are maybe gallery owners, museum curators, or whatever, and then they go like, they want their heroes in their museum. That could have something to do with it.
I think the best find their way. If like Delta is into those art pieces, and you've got this French guy, this Mo too. He's making beautiful characters, and he can paint very well. So these guys find their way into the galleries. I'm not sure if they go to the museums, but
yeah. So do you think that some artists, they had to adjust their style to enter the art world?
yeah, you have to get out to get your own signature to
Shoot it.
Yeah, he's here
Shoot,
in our
yeah,
gallery.
Yeah, he started the
Yeah, it's a good
Cali
example.
Graffiti, and that was a different style.
Jazz.
A laser 3.340 also is
For his
in galleries
quotes.
and
Yeah.
musea. Hugo Kaagman. But then again, you say it's the old heroes
Yeah,
now getting
yeah.
in. But for laser is quite young in.
But he has
he makes nice stuff.
philosophical quotes that people find interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the last question from our audience is from Nicholas, and he's asking, when was the best period of Dutch graffiti?
I say 1985.
Yeah.
1985 for sure.
because everything was there.
It was
The old, the
it
new.
was it was like an explosion. It started 84 the hangout started in September, and then 85 was extreme. Really an explosion.
It was all over, eh?
All over, yeah.
You had punk and hip hop and well, even disco graffiti. It was all over, as high as one could get.
And I was the king with my name. It was everywhere. Every tram, every city building.
Wow. Yeah, really nice. So much history, and yeah, we definitely see that you guys have a very, very important contribution to this whole scene and the history of the movement, how it evolved. And well, the final question that I have, yeah, like you guys, could you tell us a little bit what you have been up to recently? What are your future projects, and if graffiti somehow still influence you?
Yeah, after making this movie, we did some small projects, but it didn't really fit. So I went back to the communication advertising business. So I have my own agency, and I do a lot of work in designing and these kind of things. And I'm still connected to graffiti, and once in a while I paint a wall if I'm with some couple of friends, and you still follow it every day. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Nice. What about you?
And I have a record shop that I called ZAP Records. I had a different shop before, or different shops I should say, but now I sort of came back to my roots. And I have a record shop, ZAP Records. And there's also some graffiti elements in the design of the shop and in the logo, and some bags. The idea is still to do some bags by all the graffiti writers, record bags and things like that. Nice. But I don't do graffiti, although I always think I will, but I haven't done so far. I still have to get started. I got a little girl and that keeps me occupied.
Yeah, I understand. Life changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what about you, Diana?
I make almost every day. I make a drawing. I draw comics. Cartoons and about actual situations, and I write a small story, a poetical story with it. I still write poetry. I always perform and read poetry. And as soon as schools start asking again, I have these very nice lessons from cave painting till graffiti, about the history of the oral and visual arts, and how you get the writing matter together in all these things fit in together, and I let youngsters, kids make their own poetry and illustrate it themselves, just to give them the power of self-initiative and self-expression.
Yeah, wow, exciting. Very nice to know what you guys are up to now, and interesting that somehow graffiti and art are, of course, still part of your lives. So I wish you all a lot of success, and thank you so much for joining this panel. We could really stay talking, I think, for some more hours, but well, that's it for now. Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having me, having us.
Our
Having
pleasure.
us.
Yes.
Our pleasure. Really, yeah, a lot of fun to do it.
Enjoy the movie.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
it's still the
everybody
best
for
graffiti
watching.
movie out there in Holland.
Sorry?
It's
Thank
still
you.
the best graffiti movie out there in
yeah.
Holland.
Oh, yeah, so that's important to say, of course. So starting now, right after we finish our panel, the Kroonjuwelen movie will be already available in our YouTube channel. So you can watch it and understand more about everything what we were talking about. And yeah, we definitely recommend you to watch it, of course. Thank you all so much for watching us this evening, and hope to see you again next time. Have a great time. Bye.
Bye.